Alright, we're here for the last video in this series, just to go ahead and reassemble the device. First thing we're going to go ahead and put in is our 3.5mm headphone jack. I'm trying to put this in with the grommet first. It doesn't necessarily want to fit back in exactly right. See, it's pressing out here just on the right hand side a little bit. Thought it'd be easy to put it in with the grommet first, but it looks like maybe it'll be easier to put the grommet in and then put the headphone jack into the grommet. There's a little piece of adhesive tape to the right of it that's kind of causing it to not fit in correctly. Just going to see if I can't push it underneath it rather than have to take it out. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like it wants to go in exactly right. I'm going to go ahead and just remove this little tiny piece of adhesive tape here. And then go ahead and put our headphone jack grommet back in. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and just lay this down here at the bottom. Just make sure it's in there nice and snug. Go ahead and put the adhesive back on. Then we can take our headphone jack and put it back inside the grommet now that it's in place. It's starting to become a struggle here. There we go. Go ahead and put the vibration module back in. Our front-facing camera and our proximity sensor just fit right back into their respective areas. Let's make sure they're seated nice and flush. Our little board that goes down here at the bottom can go in next. Should still have a little bit of adhesive on the back side of it. We can go ahead and put this ribbon cable back on. These ribbon cables can be a little bit tricky to get to snap back into place. Just don't be very forceful with them. They can bend the pins and then no longer function. Take our logic board and put it back in place. Now this is going to be a little bit tricky. We need to make sure that all the ribbon cables are out from underneath the board. There's 5 total. There's the one for the headphone jack, front-facing camera, power button, the LCD, and then the one that's underneath right before the battery also will need to go. It's currently underneath the logic board. Now the board has these little metal pins on them at the top that need to hit their contact points. So what we need to do is take the board, insert it from the top, and push down towards the bottom, just making sure all those ribbon cables are out from underneath. This one down here can be a little bit tricky. There's also a pin that it sits on top of down here at the bottom. So we'll need to wiggle it around until it sits back in nice and snug back into the board. Now it can be, like I was saying, a little bit tricky also. The grommet that we put back on for the USB port is also somewhat tricky. You need to make sure that that grommet that's right above the vibration module is nice and flush and pushed back in. You may have to use your spudger to push it back underneath the metal frame of the phone. This ribbon cable that I'm trying to put on seems just a little bit short now. Take a look at that here in just a second. And it looks like it might be caused just by the board not sitting exactly where we want it to be. So I'm just going to finagle it around just a little bit more, just kind of pressing up at the bottom and wiggling it back into place again. Making sure these pins right here at the top are touching correctly. There we go. Now the little cables will sit down nice and flush. Now, like I was saying, these can be a little bit tricky to put in. They're not always centered onto the metal connector on the back. Sometimes the connector pin that actually connects is off to one side, so you want to pay attention to that and not force it into place. It'll snap in pretty easy once you get it lined up correctly. Go ahead and put the foil back down over the vibration module here. This cable down here at the bottom is being just a little bit tricky. There we go. Now we're going to take this little wire antenna cable and snap it back down. Sometimes these can be very frustrating, so just make sure you line it up correctly, just right on top, and then just push down with your fingernail a little bit, and that'll kind of snap it back into its correct spot. Take our nylon spudger and just push these metal pieces back into, it looks like there's little grounding clips in here to hold this down. We can go ahead and put our earpiece speaker in. Now looking at it, it needs to make contact with the back of this casing here, but it looks like either direction you put it in, it's going to fit properly. So let's go ahead and insert it in. There's also these little cutouts on the side, so maybe I take that back. These little cutouts, make sure the cutouts line up correctly with the side that you're trying to put it in on the board here. You'll see that one cutout has a larger hole than the other and needs to go in the right direction. Go ahead and put our loudspeaker back on the bottom down here. It goes in towards the bottom first and kind of closes like a door. Kind of hear it snap back into place once you get it correct. Take our back frame and do the same thing. We need to insert the top of it first and then snap it back down. It looks like this grommet here is causing us a little bit of trouble. We're just going to take our nylon spudger here and just kind of push this grommet back into place. So just make sure it fits underneath the black frame here. That way when you go ahead and put the housing back on the back here, it'll sit down nice and flush. So it goes back in kind of like the bottom does, but start at the top of it first. And just go ahead and go down the sides and snap back everything into place. You'll hear it kind of click once you get it to the right spot. Go ahead and insert our battery here. We're just going to go ahead and power the device on and make sure it functions before we go too much further. You don't want to put all the screws in and have to take them all back out again if the ribbon cables aren't put down properly. Give it just a few seconds for the phone to load. Excellent. You can see that everything's functioning for us. Now we're going to go ahead and insert the screws back in. Now remember, the 2 silver screws you have go at the bottom of the phone. The 5 black screws go at the top of the phone. Let's go ahead and put those back into place. I went ahead and tried to remagnetize my screwdriver here, but it's not doing a very good job. Unfortunately, it's not sticking on there. I'd suggest a magnetized screwdriver for this portion. It's so much easier to put these screws in if you have to magnetize the screwdriver to put them in. Let's put the second silver one on the bottom here. The remaining 5 at the top. Now these don't have to be extremely tight. You just want to get them nice and snug. They have a little bit of a thread locker on them that'll make them so they don't move back out of the phone. Two more to go. Last screw here, then we can just go ahead and snap our back panel on. Not an extremely difficult repair, but I hope you enjoyed the video. If you found it useful, go ahead and hit the like button. If you have any questions, go ahead and throw them down in the comments. I'll do my best to go ahead and answer those for you. If you want to see future repair videos, go ahead and subscribe to me. I'll throw a couple on a month. And as always, I appreciate you watching, and I hope to catch you on the next video.